It's official! I'm a HO Trainiac!
Thomas Tierce videos are brought to you by my Patreons and viewers like you. Thank you.
So, if you've been keeping up with my shorts, you'll know that I recently started getting into HO modelling. And over the last year, I've acquired quite a lot of models. Most of them are Bachmann Thomases, and some of them are real-life engines. And some are just plain weird, like my underground Ernies. HO modelling is actually a big part of Thomas's legacy, from the Reverend Audrey's own model layout to the show's Gauge 1 props. The model railway aesthetic and hobby has always been linked to Thomas's identity. Especially thanks to brands like Bachmann, who make the models look just like the show, while Hornby tries to make the models look like the show. Like, bro, what's wrong with that Edward? So today, I'm going to take you through my collection, where I tell you the order in which I got everything. This will be a comprehensive look into my journey so far into the HO world. So, without further ado, let's get started at the beginning. So the first Hornby anything I ever got was back on my 7th birthday, when I got the Hornby Easterner starter set. This set left a really good impression on me when I was younger, as this train set had so much you wouldn't see in Hornby's train sets today. I think we all have a little bias with our first HO set, but this one was really good. It came with this cool green train, a flatbed, a truck, a van, a coach. In my mind, this was the ideal starter set. And despite loving playing with this set, sadly over the 16 years since I got it, I sadly lost all of the parts for it, and that was the only HO stuff I ever had until 2021. I got nostalgic for that old set again, so about 3 years ago I decided to get a second starter set, the Industrial Freight. I got this starter set specifically because I wanted the same engine, only red. I think these two sets are a really good comparison between Hornby in 2008 versus Hornby today. I don't know about you, but I think I know which set I would have picked. So let's get this railway set up and let's get this track laid. And here's the actual train set itself, built up. I'm not sure where the rolling stock went over those 4 years since I got this set, but the van I got from the set would later be repainted and given as a birthday gift to Michael White. So I'll just represent the truck and the van and the brake van I got with this set with other rolling stock. I also like to call this little red locomotive that I got with the set Elmer, or LLMR, because of the railway initials on his side. I also got an Annie and Clarabelle around this time too.
Oh, and he's derailed.
Clarabelle's buffer has since been broken off, so I need to glue that back on now.
Oh. There we go. Perfect.
This is also where I got my Hornby track packs as well to make a full proper loop with extended track. So let's build up that track as well. Also around this time, I got myself an LBSC Thomas, my first ever Bachmann Thomas engine. Sadly, the lining has come off on it a lot, just from the 3 years of me playing around with it like a crazy person, and I will need to fix those lines at some point, but I really like my LBSC Thomas, if I'm being honest, since it was my first model. And yeah, for the longest time, this was my only HO stuff. That was until 2022, where I made my headcanon Railway Series Realistic Rosie. Now this USA tank is a fantastic model. My headcanon for Rosie is that she was like taken out of the works early, hence why she has this pink undercoat. And this model was my representation of her being in that livery. Kind of like how Thomas and James had a pink undercoat in The Adventure Begins and Series 13 too. I was quite happy with how my Rosie model came out, so I kind of wanted to do a Thomas one too. And I knew if I ever wanted to do a realistic Thomas model, I would be inspired by Wilbert Audrey's version of the model. And here it is! Oh yeah, about that Ginty. So the Ginty I got was kinda shite. It didn't run very well, the wheel was broken, and would sometimes spark. So I took him apart to see if I could try fix him, but I think I just made that worse, and eventually I just gutted him and I gave up on it. I tried painting him pink too, because I wanted a version of Thomas in that livery kinda, but I didn't even finish it. And unfortunately, this experience with this Ginty is what kinda put me off getting model trains for a while. It wasn't until August of 22 when I got this N2 when I was visiting the Star Tugs Trust over in Ripley. Like the Ginty and Rosie, I also wanted to make a realistic Ryan out of this model. It's in its white coat base. He looks kinda ghostly and I like it. I also got a Warship Diesel around this time too at the Wexford Model Train Show after the riot. He was also recently painted into a white livery, and I hope to make him into a model of Diesel 10. And the last train I got in this era was my Bachmann Percy at the Tallaghclin Railway during my Journey Beyond Ireland experience. And here he is! Oh, yeah. Percy's kind of in pieces right now. This Percy has had quite the story to tell. It was at the Festiniog Railway. It was then at the Dean Forest Railway where it met Trojan, which is cool since they look alike. It was at Thomasland. It was at the Irish Boys meeting in Wexford. Then it was at another meeting, and then it even made it back to Audrey. But despite travelling so far, ironically, this Percy has never actually worked. I think I dropped him at some point along my travels, so I took the Percy apart on livestream, and that went about as well as I'd expect.
It's in. Yay, Percy! Woohoo! That's in the wrong way. Bruh! It's in the wrong way. No.
After having a mental breakdown over Percy, I just gave up and put him back in the tub. But that was about it for HO stuff from me. That was until I got home from Audrey X on my way back from Wales, where I stopped in Mark's Models in Dublin and I decided to get some creepy Underground Ernie merch, where I reviewed some Underground Ernie circle sets, which came with a circle, a coach, a platform, a controller, a track, and it even came with this figure of Ernie.
He's a pretty spot on model.
So that's kind of cool. I also got this Bakerloo as well. I also got a Jubilee for the video. Yippee! And I got a Victoria. At the time I didn't have Hammersmith and City 2. So I just had the 4 of them. These models run terribly and they are very poorly detailed and are just plain wrong. Like, why do they all sound like a swarm of bees?
Oh, I've got such a headache!
Something that's also pretty cool about these Ernies is that they come with these sort of tunnel portals which match the same ones that they actually have in the show. So I'm going to put them at the back of the set.
But weirdly enough, Ernie was what kind of kicked off my Bachmann phase. After seeing the circle set that came with this set, I really wanted a Bachmann Daisy. So I eventually got her. And Daisy is one of my best Bachmann models ever. She goes so quickly, she runs very smoothly, but it's also funny seeing her with Circle together, it's just funny. Although ironically with Daisy, she can't really pull any rolling stock or anything, so getting her was kind of a mistake in retrospect, but I'm still really happy that I got her first. Now, one thing I've yet to show off is the table that all this stuff is sitting on. I built the tables myself using scraps of old wood from the workshop where I used to work as a carpenter. The legs and the side of the table here are offcuts of giant MDF sheets screwed together. And below the table is where I store all my cardboard buildings. You might remember TT guy saying about these cardboard buildings in his video. These cardboard buildings are really cool, by the way. Most of them are based on props from the show, and I really love how they add a bit of character to the buildings. They look so cool. They really transform a layout. If there's interest, I might do a video on these cardboard buildings as well. So it was at this point I realised that I needed more rolling stock. Most of my rolling stock had either been lost or given away, so I opted for this cheap rolling stock that I got on eBay, and honestly, these wagons are still some of my favourites. There's one tanker, 2 coal trucks, a flatbed of timber, a flatbed of logs with a broken coupling, and this one truck with no coupling either. So now that I had the trucks and I had 2 coaches, what I really needed was some red express coaches. So that's exactly what I decided to do. My nicknames for them are Blood, Custard and Cream, as a reference to their colours. These were old and noisy Triang coaches, but they were cheap, so I got them. Now for my next model. I wanted something opposite to Daisy in that the model would look good pulling rolling stock or coaches. So I got myself a red Rosie, and she is one of my favourite models to run. She is so good with trucks, she's so good with Annie and Clarabelle, and she's just a good all-rounder model if I'm being honest. The only issue now is that I had 2 USA tanks, but besides the Warship Diesel, I didn't have any express engines. And what better than the Soda Express engine himself, Gordon. Now, while I do love Gordon, for some reason he always seemed to have trouble on my layouts. And sometimes I'll even punish him by giving him Bluebell Productions' clown truck behind him because it's Gordon the really silly engine. And since I was on my tender engine kick, I decided to get Emily around this time too. Now, of course, keep in mind, this was over the course of a few months. I wasn't buying all of this in just one day. It just seems like a lot when I actually lay it out in a story, but anyway. And I do think getting stuff over time is a lot better than getting everything at once because you have more time to enjoy the model. And I think you actually have a greater appreciation for certain models if you spend more time just sort of running them. So Emily was an okay runner, but she was very weak. Like, she can barely pull trucks and she can barely pull coaches. So she really isn't fun to play with if I'm being honest. However, she is still an absolutely stunning model to look at. Now, when I got Emily, I realized that I could actually probably film some episodes with her. Now, you may know that I wanted to do a series called Everything's Rosy one day, and I thought maybe what if Bachmann models might be the way to go with them? Which is why I decided my next model would be a pink Rosie. I was not a fan of the face on her at all, but after swapping it with Red Rosie, I realized that the faces look so much better. Rosie's red CGI face looks so much better than the old terrible one on the pink model, which is why I swapped it for the pink model. Perhaps one day, whenever that series comes out, it will be in HO. Now I had 3 USA tanks at this point in my collection. I decided my next purchase would be rolling stock instead of a train, so I got a job lot of 6 trucks. And another lot of 5 vans and a brake van. There was a T-van, a fish van, and there was this cement truck, which I've been told was the same one that Blue Circle worked with, which is the basis of Fergus, so that's kind of cool. And for my next engine, I decided I would get Mavis, just since I thought she'd make a good shunter. And here she is what I would be saying if it didn't take her so long to arrive. Yeah, despite ordering her, she didn't come for like a really long time. So while waiting an eternity for my Mavis to arrive, I felt that Emily was looking rather lonely, so I decided my next purchase would be her coaches. And hey, look, she was actually able to pull her coaches by herself. Since my Mavis still hadn't arrived at this point, I felt I needed some more main characters, since I only had Gordon and Emily, and Percy was just dead. So I finally got an original Blue Thomas. Took me long enough. The main reason I got this Thomas was because it came with a snowplow. In my opinion, it was a bargain. He has this little clip that screws on the bottom of him, so you can take the snowplow off if you want. I just like to hold it on with a bit of blue tack, and I think it works just fine. Mavis still hadn't arrived yet, so I decided to continue filling out my main cast. My next model was Edward! And can I just say, Edward is one of the best Bachmann models ever, in my opinion. This model does such a fantastic job of representing Edward as a character. Dare I say Edward's best merch ever, if you could even count this as merch? But anyway, like Red Rosie, I think Edward looks good with everything he pulls. It doesn't matter what's behind Edward, he will look great with it. I loved Edward so much that I thought red branchline coaches would look really lovely behind him. And I was right. I genuinely cannot recommend red branchline coaches and Edward enough. They look great. Mavis still hadn't arrived at this point, but I didn't want to get another engine before her arriving, so I got this well wagon flatbed, since I always wanted one. And it's also so much fun to just put stuff on them, so yeah. My next bit of rolling stock was this crane called Rocky.
Go get him, Edward!
I thought Emily could pull him like she did in Series 24, but nope, Emily can't pull Rocky. Although Emily could pull the next character I got, Old Slow Coach, which is my second Hornby Thomas model. Only true Hornby fans will know what reference this is.
But who's this? It's Emily's first outing. She's taking Old Slow Coach to the fair.
Mavis still hadn't arrived at this point, so I got these vans with a brake van. And a whole lot of coal trucks, so I had more than enough rolling stock at this point. Since Mavis was seemingly lost in transit, I decided my next model would be a diesel like her. Enter Diesel. So, this is my diesel model. As you can see, I really like him, especially when I get to do his voice. I really like the grumpy diesel face variant, but not that stupid smiling one. Why? Why would I smile when I've got nothing to smile about? Okay, sorry, I'll stop.
Oh.
Silly Diesel. So it was at this point that I wanted to fill out more of my main cast, and my friend TTE guy had already gotten a Bachmann Henry, which looked pretty good, so I decided to get him. Like Edward, I think Henry is also an S tier model in the range. He looks good pulling anything behind him. Sadly, one of the pins came out on him while he was running around one time, and I haven't been able to replace it, so it just kind of sits on top. I might either get a pin to replace it, And here is Health and Safety Percy Henry pulling a dead Percy.
Health and safety, Percy.
During my Happily Ever After video was when I got my next model, James. I got James from Mark's Models on my way home, and I even came with a free donut. I was also happy to get this James because the original version of the James has this red thing on his smoke box, and it also has grey wheels. It's very weird, but it's probably because it's based on promo art or something, but thankfully my James is one of the later versions, so it doesn't have those issues. Also during the trip, I was very tempted to get a Bachmann Toby, but it was a good thing I didn't get him because it turned out I'd already bought him. Yeah, and I completely forgot that I'd bought him. Good thing I didn't buy him in that shop. So Toby was the last main character I got. He's slightly noisy and very slow, but so is Toby. So I love this Bachmann model all the same. Shame about the cowcatcher having an open plastic on him, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. Thanks to Toby and Henry, I now had every main character from the original Steam team. I wasn't sure who to get next after this. Since I was missing Hammersmith and City, I thought it might be fun to get them. I had no interest in getting Brooklyn too, since, well, Brooklyn kinda sucks. So here's Hammersmith and City too. Now, to be honest, Hammersmith and City are the only models in my collection that I think I regret buying. Well, maybe that and the old Ginty. You see, in the show, Hammersmith is usually the one seen driving forward. But for some reason, Bachmann made it that City was the one who can drive forward, while Hammersmith is free-rolling, like he's the coach. So now whenever I want them to drive forward, I have to drive them backwards, which would be fine if they weren't slow as hell. Like, bruh, Hammersmith's eyes don't even move. They're just posable. Why wasn't Hammersmith the one who was powered? Ugh. Honestly, I don't mind the original Bachmann Ernies, but the Hammersmith and City are just so bad. Don't ever get them. They're terrible.
Bruh.
Another Ernie Bachmann thing I wanted to get was Ernie's Rail Speeder, but sadly they are impossible to find nowadays, since most of the motors for them were used by HO modelers back in the day. It was like the only Ernie thing that actually sold well. So I had to settle with this Ernie 1 toy instead. I hope one day to turn it into a HO kit. Also, the Ernie figure that I got with the set goes in super well. Toby was starting to look kind of lonely without Henrietta, so I decided that Henrietta would be my next Bachmann model. I really like the HO Henrietta. I'd honestly put it up there with Henry or Edward if I'm being honest, as I just love how that model complements Toby. My Mavis still had not come at this point, so I got in contact with my post office, and it turned out that I had just forgotten to pay a fee, and they were just holding onto the parcel. So yeah, kind of a major L on my part there for Mavis, lol. But who cares? I paid the fee, and Mavis finally arrived! Yay! And she looked lovely. Mavis is honestly an underrated model in my opinion, as she goes so well with everything, like a lot of the Bachmann models. It's just a shame she took so long to arrive, but hey, that was my fault. And for my next model, I got, drumroll please, Duck. Now that I had the Steam team, and I had all the Ernies, and Mavis had arrived, Duck seemed like the next logical purchase. I do like my Duck, but he does tend to derail on the shorter tracks because of his long wheel radius. I've also been told that this happens with Donald and Douglas, the twins, but I've yet to get them yet, so yeah. And now that I had Duck, my next model was going to be Oliver! Okay, now Oliver I know isn't the most popular model. While Oliver is way too small, especially in relation to other characters in the range, he is still CGI accurate, I guess. So I guess I'll give him a pass. But man, he just looks so small in comparison to everyone else. Oh yes, and I also got Toad! I bought this Toad at an Irish Boys meetup, which was pretty cool. Toad was also bought in Mark's Models in Dublin, and I really like him. He goes so well with my Oliver, even if he is huge next to him. And my second last model was a custom Philip. While I don't hate Philip's basis, an American Pennsylvanian shunter on Sodor has always been a little weird to me, so I love the idea of making Philip a Sentinel shunter. There's just something about this British boxy design that I love. Having the bottom all green and the top be all yellow is so cool. I love it. And also he can be removable from his thing, which made the painting so much easier on him. And finally, my last model is Murdoch. Now I've actually showed off Murdoch recently and he's still not finished, but he's looking pretty good. I used a Trackmaster face for him. He looks so powerful, especially those driving wheels. I'm really happy with him. And he's a lot cheaper than the Hornby Murdoch, which goes for like a bajillion euro now. Bruh. And I'm sure you're all wanting to see all of my rolling stock on one track together, so here it is. And oh no, it's all derailed. Oh no. Oh, it's all derailed. Oh no. Pretty crazy to think that this all just started with that one Hornby set, and also a few Bachmann Ernies. So yeah, now that I've got most of the Thomas Bachmann range, there's not much else to get. There's Donald and Douglas, and there's Denara Gage, and I'd also like to finish off my realistic customs of Ryan and Diesel, and I'd also like to do a custom Thomas Ginty model one day. I also want to finish off my custom models of Murdoch, I want to do a custom model of Molly, but I shan't say any more or I'll spoil the next story. So, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Slán Abhaile.